Hello, I'm Dimitri, and welcome back to the video series where I show you how to set up an enterprise-grade Kubernetes cluster just in minutes. But first, let's recap what we are trying to achieve here quickly. We want a fully functional Kubernetes cluster with all the essential apps installed so we can start the development process right away. To make that happen, we need a highly automated setup. It should work both on-premises and in the cloud. In my case, that means AWS and the Hetzner Cloud. The setup should be reproducible for every cluster, bundling everything together in a clean and consistent way. The challenge is to stay modular and flexible while still keeping everything structured in a clean way so we can define dependencies between the modules and components. To solve that, I'm using Terragrunt. Terragrunt allows me to loosely couple Terraform modules and manage a separate state file for each module, which makes the management of a complex infrastructure much easier. Now let's take a closer look how the automation works, all powered by Terragrunt. As you can see on the screen, I've broken the process into several clear steps. And the best part is you can execute everything with just one simple command. Terragrunt run all apply. Let me walk you through what happens behind the scenes. The infrastructure step. This is the step where the infrastructure is provisioned. It works across different environments, whether Hetzner or AWS Cloud. For on-premises setups, we can define our infrastructure we have provisioned before. But of course, it's possible to extend this step to, for example, use some providers for the VMware platform or Proxmox environments, the DNS setup. If you are using AWS, this step configures DNS through Route 53. This is not required but recommended and makes your setup more accessible and production ready. The K3S cluster setup step. This is where the Kubernetes cluster is installed using K3S, a lightweight distribution that's perfect for fast and flexible setups. The preparation step. Here's everything set up and adjusted so the cluster can receive workloads. This fetches the kubeconfig and allows us to proceed further with our automations. The deployment of Traefik. Traefik acts as an ingress controller. It routes external traffic to our services into the cluster and also handles SSL. Why we don't use the default deployment of Traefik through K3S? Because we need to customize our Traefik deployment to better suit our requirements. The deployment of ArgoCD. With ArgoCD deployed, this enables GitOps. That means that the actual application stack is managed through a GitOps repository. The sync link you can see here means that ArgoCD watches the Git repository and syncs the desired state into the Kubernetes cluster. Applied changes in the future will also be synced into the cluster. The repository includes everything we need. Longhorn for storage, Cert Manager for TLS, Grafana and its operator for monitoring, additional namespaces, Harbor as a OCI compatible Helm or image registry, Prometheus for metrics, a GitLab runner for CI/CD processes with GitLab, and sealed secrets for the secure management of secrets. So to sum it up, with this fully automated and modular setup, I can deploy an enterprise-grade Kubernetes platform within minutes. And it works the same way each time across multiple environments. A very reproducible setup here. Okay, now some details about how we're going to move further. In the intro, I mentioned we'd set up the nodes, and we will. But before diving into details, I realized it's crucial to step back and show you the big picture. How everything ties together, what each part is responsible for, and how we will achieve full automation from infrastructure to GitOps. Once you understand the big picture, everything will just fall into place. The elimination of Ansible. During creation, I made a big improvement. I completely removed Ansible from the setup. Why? Because everything Ansible did can be handled with Terraform native features like remote exec or file provisioner. This change significantly increases automation and simplifies the workflow and reduces the number of parts to worry about. One less tool to worry about is more speed for us. But before we move along, let me actually show you how this will look like. I'll demonstrate the current result, the fully bundled Terragrunt setup in action. You will see what gets deployed, how it behaves, and what we'll have for our next steps to set up GitOps. All right, this is the structure of our project. We have an envs directory that represents different environments. For example, here is the development environment, which is organized in multiple layers. The infrastructure layer, the AWS Route 53 DNS layer, the K3S setup layer, the prepare layer, and the Traefik layer. And other layers, as shown in the presentation, will follow. Then we have an execution folder. This execution folder contains helper scripts to make it easier to execute Terragrunt with specific configurations. There's a Terragrunt download folder specified for the Terraform cache to cache the Terraform modules. Next, we have the modules directory. Each module is self-contained and defines its own inputs and outputs via variables and Terraform output mechanisms. The state is managed by Terragrunt. We have defined the state directory within our Terragrunt configuration here. It's the state path at the root level. The main idea behind the environment structure and overall Terragrunt setup is to have a dedicated environment configuration file here in the environments. In this file, we define all required parameters. For example, we start with the stage, dev in this case. Then we'll define the zone name. It's the dmcloud.link. After that, we configure the input parameters for the Terraform modules. For the infrastructure module, for example, we want to expose the management protocols. The cloud provider for the infrastructure module is AWS. We provide our public SSH key, so we can then connect to the instances in the steps which will follow. In the AWS configuration, we define the configuration for the worker and server nodes, and we'll set the AWS Amazon image identification, which is Amazon Linux. For the sensitive parameters, we are using runcmd to fetch the required credentials from the SSM parameter store stored in the AWS public cloud, which is recommended to keep the setup simple. Then we have our DNS configuration. We define here all necessary zone and records we work after with. In the K3S configuration, we also fetch the cluster token from the AWS parameter store. We specify the K3S version. A custom certificate authority is configured, useful if you are using self-hosted GitLab runners, a Docker registry, or need to support custom Docker builds inside your cluster. The cluster domain is also defined here. All of this will be explained in more detail in the upcoming videos, so subscribe to my channel. For now, let's see how the setup performs. We've configured our cloud infrastructure provider as AWS here. So let's go ahead and spin up the K3S cluster on AWS and verify that everything's running, including Traefik. Okay, now we are in the Terragrunt repository and we can use the execution helper script. We want to apply the dev environment, just execute that. Now, of course, the Terragrunt fetches the modules, checks the state, and shows us which groups will be provisioned. We have the infrastructure, the AWS, and so on. And Terragrunt asks us whether we are sure that we want to provision the stack. Yes, of course. First, we have the infrastructure layer, VPCs creating, and also the instance role policy attached. All this is looking good. We have our internet gateway provisioned, the AWS security groups required for the access to the instances. We also have our IPs here. And now the K3S module is running and the K3S cluster is set up. Behind the scenes, a SSH connection is established and all the required configuration, installation of packages is performed. After that, we should have a K3S cluster in a basic setup. We can see some packages are getting installed. All looks good. Now the server is set up. We can see that the K3S script for the server installation has been executed since we see the ranger here. And now all the required tools are configured through the K3S installation script. Now it's the agent's turn. The agent will connect to the server and this will give us a cluster. Now we have a configuration of one node and one server, but of course you can specify the amount of the machines you need. K3S agent starting. Now the preparation step fetches the kubeconfig. Yeah. And after we have the kubeconfig on our machine, Traefik gets deployed. We can see some configuration here. Cluster domain passed to the Traefik deployment, and the Helm release is ready. Now we can export the kubeconfig and should be able to access our Kubernetes cluster. Look at our nodes, our freshly provisioned nodes. Let's check the namespaces. Okay, we have Traefik. Let's see. Yeah, Traefik is running. All looks fine. Cool stuff here. In the next few videos, I'll guide you through each module step by step. We'll dive into each Terraform unit, and yes, we will get our heads dirty. By the end, you will have a rock-solid understanding of how to build these kind of setups. In the next episode, we'll start from scratch. I'll show you how to set up the project structure and provision the infrastructure in the Hetzner Cloud. From there, we'll connect to our cloud resources, configure the nodes, and lay the foundation for everything that follows. Hey, and if this video helped you, inspired you, or made something finally click, then take a second, please, and like the video and subscribe to my channel. Why? Because every single like and subscription shows me that everything I do matters, that it helps someone, that it makes a difference. And honestly, that's what drives me to keep going. I put a lot of time and energy into editing, scripting, preparing, and building solutions for you. But when I see real people out there watching, learning, and building, that's when it really means something. And the best part, it's just the beginning. In the upcoming videos, I'll show you how to build a fully modular Kubernetes cluster in the cloud agnostic way in minutes with GitOps, ArgoCD, and all the components mentioned in this video. So if you're interested in this kind of videos, if you want to understand how it works under the hood, if you want to build the infrastructure the right and the efficient way, and actually enjoy the process, so then hit the subscribe button and turn the notifications on so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you so much for being here, and truly thank for your support. It means a lot to me. See you in the next one.